You're listening to Paul and his amazing friends only on Paul and the 619.
Hi, how's everyone going? This is Paul in the 619, and I'm starting a new series. What I'm going to be doing is interviewing the awesome people in the community, one-on-one interviews. I was doing interviews with people on my live stream, and it's so chaotic. When you have like 6 to 8 people, it's hard to get a one-on-one conversation with somebody when 3 people are talking at the same time. So what I wanted to do is actually do these one-on-ones. And my first guest on this series of interviews is the Godfather himself, Brian LCS. He's like deeply involved in comics curing cancer, and he's also one of the founders of the CBC Awards, and he's also an author of a comic, The Doctor. He just had a successful Kickstarter for issue 2 of The Doctor, and it is so dope. So I can't wait to bring him onto this interview so we could talk about this comic. I got 2 variants. Isn't that cool? So yeah. So let's bring in Brian.
Paul, thanks for having me.
His name is John C.
What's up, Brian? Good
How's it
morning.
going?
Hey, so for you, you're in the East Coast, right?
Yes, East Coast. Yeah.
So 11 o'clock your time, 8 o'clock my time?
Yeah, you got up early on a Sunday.
Yeah, on a Sunday. So the thing is that Sundays are my days off, and I'm usually sleep in. But for you, the Godfather, I had to be up. And the thing is, are you a coffee drinker?
No, I'm not. I drink tea. Anything hot is always tea.
Tea's good.
I love the smell of coffee, but I can't stand the taste.
Yeah. Well, the thing is I'm trying to cut back on coffee, and definitely trying to cut back on energy drinks. So lately, I've been drinking a mushroom coffee, and it's actually pretty good, and I think it's working out for me. The mushroom coffee that I get is from Amazon.
Okay.
And what I like is that, you put like 8 ounces of hot water, you put a teaspoon, and you mix it up. And when you drink it, it tastes like a cup of coffee with a teaspoon of sugar. It's actually doesn't taste bad. Yeah, okay. It tastes like Brian. If it tastes like shit, I wouldn't be drinking it. So, but let's get into this interview. You're like one of the older guys in the comic book community, as including myself. And when I started doing YouTube, you were like one of the first guys that I would watch. I know you're a big Spider-Man fan, and again, like I said before, I brought you on the show. You're into the comics curing cancer, and you're also one of the founder. You are the founder of the CBC Awards.
Yes.
And so how did that all come about?
The CBC Awards was kind of, I started YouTube. It's been 4 years, and I just kind of jumped in. I was watching other people do content and said, well, I could do that. And so I kind of just jumped in and started, connecting with other channels and other community members. But then quickly I looked around and I did, there was no like awards um, for the community. I thought of it as there's so many people doing such creative stuff, whether it's interviews or whether it's editing or, just being entertaining and providing information about comic books. And so I had come from another community, personal finance community. So before I got back into comics, I was running like a personal finance blog, and I was into that community. And that community had an awards for the overall community for because there were people doing written blogs, there were people doing video stuff, people on Instagram, and so they had an award show once a year, that they celebrated that community. And so I kind of borrowed that idea and said, well, we could do that for the comic book community. And so that's really how it started.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. These past awards, one of the amazing friends on my live stream, Christina Payne, she won
Oh
like
yeah,
a best supporter of the
or
community.
Blue
Oh my
Wrench, yeah.
gosh, that was so awesome. And the thing is like when you see your friends win, you feel like you win. You know what I mean? So it's so good because you definitely celebrate people in the community, and there's so many deserving people out there. And the thing is that as far as being part of the community, definitely your votes definitely count. So when the CBC wars do come back around, I definitely encourage people in the community to vote because that's how you get your homies to win is you
Right.
vote.
Right. Yeah.
So
I mean, I'm basically, I just basically collect the votes and count them. It's all community driven, from the nominations to the finalists and then ultimately the winners. So it depends on the community being involved and getting their nominations and votes in. So, here's your opportunity to, like you said, to vote for your favorites, for your friends. So yeah, I hope we're going to kick off. It's June 7th this year. That's when this year's nominations open up. So
yeah. So as far as any like comic book shows, any cons, have you gone to any cons this year so far?
just some small local shows.
Yeah.
There was a con here in South Carolina that I went to a couple weeks ago, but the big one's going to be Heroes Con in June in North Carolina, where Charlotte, where a bunch of the community will be there. So really looking forward to that because that's just it's a great con from comics and creator perspective, and then now that we have so many people from the community coming, it makes it even, it makes it that much better.
Well, the thing is that I live on the West Coast, and I did see um, people in the community posting stuff that about Heroes Con, and I just saw it, and that was definitely a con that was on my list. So I'm actually gonna be going. I'm gonna be there this year,
Yeah,
and
yeah, looking forward
we
to it.
already have our plane tickets, our hotel, and our badges. So yeah, Brian, I'll see you out there.
Yeah,
That's gonna be
that's gonna
amazing, man. I would love. I'm gonna love to meet you live, bro.
Yeah, no, it's going to be great. I mean, because last year was the first year that I got to go, and meeting so many people that you've chatted with online or watched some of their content, shake their hand, give them a hug, it was great. And so this year it's even a bigger group that's going. So
Yeah.
it's going to be a great time.
Yeah, so definitely, for me doing the pilgrimage out there is it's gonna be amazing, And by the way, Brian, I might look tall on video, but I'm actually only 4'5". I'm a short Filipino guy, so you'll be surprised when you see me. I'm
Yeah,
not gonna.
well, that's the thing. Everybody's sitting down and they're on camera, so when you get to see them in person, you kind of can size them up a little.
Yeah, yeah. All right, so that's cool. Like the social media, we talked about that. Um, Did you partake in free comic book day yesterday?
Yeah, yeah. I got together. I went down to see Legion of Comics. So he's about an hour south of where I am, so he's in Georgia. So we went down to his shop, ABX Comics. Got to hang out with Legion, and Roscoe came down, geek out with
Very
Roscoe,
cool.
and the Comic Viking, Alan. So we all,
Nice.
we got to meet at their shop. We did free comic book day there, and then we went around to a couple different shops and grabbed lunch, and yeah, so we had a good day.
So I'm going to tell you that's before I did all this social media, going to cons was pretty much I feel like just by myself, doing comics. Now that I use social media, and I think you would agree, I know you just meet your friends. It's a little bit more. It's a more social activity because I remember I'd be like by myself going through long boxes, and if a guy got next to me, I'd be like, man, this guy's too close to me. Now it's kind of like you go to meet your friends.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah, no,
it's amazing.
it's a big, a social event. So that was, yesterday was just, we hung out. Like I said, we went to a couple different shops, couple different places, grabbed dinner. Mark was there with his dad and his kids. It's just a big hangout. It was a great time. So
Yeah. Well, people that know you know that you're a big Spider-Man fan. What are your earliest comic book memories?
So I didn't, as a kid, I watched my first probably introduction to superheroes was probably Batman, the 66, Adam West, watching
Yep.
that on reruns. And then probably the original 60s Spider-Man cartoon. So I used to watch those as a kid and, rewind, replays of those. And I gravitated towards Spider-Man because I lived in New York, so I was on Long Island, a couple counties over from Queens, where Peter Parker grew up, and then so as a 4 or 5 year old, I thought I could go into New York City and see Spider-Man swinging around, like I could bump into him, so that was my hook, and then earliest comic book memories is probably going shopping with my mom and dad and checking out the spinner rack and getting a book. I
Yeah.
don't even remember what the first book I purchased, but then as I got a little bit older, we had a 7-Eleven, a convenience store that wasn't too far from the house, and I used to go up there. I'd either ride my bike or if we were going with my parents or like a family friend, and I always go to the newsstand and see what books were there and pick up a book. And then I was lucky enough when I was like a teenager, there was a hotel, a Holiday Inn that wasn't that far from my house. I could basically walk to it, and they would have a comic book show like once a month. And so I started going to the hotel, comic book show, and
Oh, that's awesome.
buying books there. So yeah, I kind of got hooked early, as a young kid, and I had a couple friends too that were into comics. So I had two close friends. One of my friends, he had an older brother that was into comics, so
Okay.
it was like two brothers and they were into like stuff that I wasn't into, like Thor and Fantastic Four, and so I kind of got hooked into um, some books like characters that I normally wouldn't read. So yeah, kind of unusual that I actually had some friends that were into them. We could talk about books or talk about different characters and things like that.
That's awesome. So they rebooted Spider-Man. Are you reading the new reboot?
Yeah, yeah.
What do you think?
I'm a sucker for punishment, I guess. But yeah, I keep going back. The new series is 2 issues in, and it's okay. It's definitely a better start than the previous run. But still, I still feel like it needs to get better. I think Ultimate Spider-Man has been really the best story that we've seen in a
Yeah.
while.
Yeah.
So it does ASM doesn't compare to Ultimate, but I'm hopeful that Amazing Spider-Man will turn itself around, but we'll see.
Well, the thing is, I haven't read a Spider-Man comic in a while, and I did buy Amazing Spider-Man #1. I read it. It wasn't bad. It wasn't bad.
It was good. It
Yeah,
wasn't anything amazing. It wasn't amazing, but it was decent. It was better than, like I said, the start of last run where with Zeb Wells, where there was a lot of we thought MJ and Peter were going to get back together, and then in issue 1 they blew it right up. So,
yeah.
yeah, I think this series is off to a better start.
Well, I think that what they want to do, I think they wanted to promote, and correct me if I'm wrong. You're the Spider-Man reader. The that they're trying to promote Black Cat and Spider-Man. They want them together.
Right. Yeah. Well, they've kind of
So I
said
don't
it.
know why.
Yeah, unofficially they've said they don't. Marvel doesn't want Peter and MJ together, and
That's
so yeah,
weird.
I
That's
know.
that's just strange. That's just strange.
Yeah.
So, do you mind if we get into your comic? We talk about the Doctor.
Sure.
All right, cool. So, the first thing I noticed when, and this is the same with the first issue. I mean, it's like really what put well together. It's a quality comic. The art, the writing, just the whole thing. It's just like you could throw like Marvel on there, and I would be like, man, that's a good comic.
Thank you. I appreciate
So,
it. Yeah. Yeah.
what inspired you to write a comic?
I've kind of always been. I wish I was better at art because I used to draw. I would draw as a kid, and I always took art classes, like in middle school and high school. I always kind of leaned towards the art side of
Yeah,
things in my education, but I'm just not very good at drawing, and I just never really, and it takes practice. And to be fair, I don't regularly draw. I used to, like when I was in, like I said, middle school and high school, and I was decent, but so I've always been on that kind of a little bit of that creative side. And when I was in college, I studied film and television production, and I
oh
was
well,
doing a lot of writing, a lot of screenplay writing, and television script writing. That was my plan out of college, was that I would get into television or film, and that never happened. I kind of went in a different path. I was still in the like television side, but it was more on the technical end. And so, um, and then I basically had stopped writing and because got married, family, job, so that a
yeah,
lot of that stuff kind of got put on the side. But then
yeah.
when I got back into collecting about 5 years ago, I started seeing some of the Kickstarters that other people were doing, and then said, maybe I could write a comic book, and it really kind of clicked with me. Well, if my ultimate goal, like when I was in college, was I wanted to make a film. I wanted to write and direct a film, but
Yeah.
you know, I don't have $40 million lying around, so um, I can produce a comic book, which basically is the same type of you're creating a script and you're creating visuals, but just in a comic book form. And so that really kind of clicked with me, saying, look, I could still pursue that dream of producing a story and characters, but just don't do it in film. I'll do it in comic book form. And so, and then I started doing some research, talking to some other creators that have done Kickstarters before, and it was really obtainable that you could do it with a little bit of hard work. You could create a book. The printing companies are out there, and so that really kind of sparked me to want to get back to writing and actually create a book.
Well, the thing is like you watch Thunderbolts. I saw you on IG. You watched
Yeah,
Thunderbolts, and when you watch the end credit scenes, it's like 1,000, 2,000 people,
right.
to put the movie together. And the thing is that I mean, you had to gather all these people together. Besides you writing the book, to come out with a quality product. So I'm giving you kudos. Where did you find all these people? Like, where did you find the artists and you
So yeah,
know?
I mean, I like I said, I reached out to Brandon from Dismay Comics. He's done some Kickstarters before. Doug
Yeah.
Bratton, who did Isolation with
Hmm.
Reggie Collects, they did their own book. So I reached out to them and kind of were picking their brains about their experience because they produce books ahead of time, and so they gave me a bunch of tips on, where to find some people. There's a number of, believe it or not, Facebook groups for comic book writers or comic book artists, and
Wow.
so I joined a bunch of those groups and started, described what I was looking for, and was able to find the artist for issue one. I used a different artist for issue two, but found those people, and then, like I said, from there, I had the script done. I wrote the script, gave them the book, the script, and then they started creating the pages, the interior pages, and we'd work back and forth. Comment, oh, this I'd like changed, or I want this to look this way. And then it just basically, it came together that way. It's really, once you, depending on what you're, if you're a writer and you have to find an artist, if you're an artist, maybe you don't have the ability to write your own story, you find a writer. But, so that's kind of how it started. And then it's really just a matter of, how many covers do you, the decision side of it, how many covers do you want? Who are you going to use to print it? There's a number of printing companies. They have a certain format. You provide the book in that format, and they take it and produce it into a comic. So
Cool. So Daniel Warren Johnson, when he writes his stories, the characters that he writes in his stories, sometimes he uses his wife and his little girl as inspiration for characters. So I wanted to ask you, is any of the characters inspired by any real life people in your life?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I typically, the characters are typically bits and pieces from people, whether it's family, friends, coworkers. It's sometimes a little bit of pieces from each of them kind of put into a character, right? Because I definitely want to write. When I write, I try to write of things that I know about, right? So
Yeah, most definitely.
so pull from my life experience, pull from conversations I've had, or experiences that I've had, or of friends and family. So yeah, definitely try to pull in that and put bits and pieces. I'm typically thinking of somebody, or like I said, somebody in my life when I'm writing that character.
Nice. So as far as your writing, I know you're only on issue 2, but how far have you written this story? Like, how far ahead time?
So I've kind of outlined the first 3 issues. So issue 3 is currently, actually, the script is done, and it's actually with the artist right now. So the same artist, David, who did issue 2, he's working on issue 3 for me. So, and that's going to kind of wrap up the story arc, of this kind of opening story arc. And then I have an outline for 2 other totally different stories with new characters. So I'm working on starting to outline and write the next totally different book. So, but I think the Doctor, some of the characters that I've introduced there, they could be ongoing. I could potentially spin off into their own story. So I think there's there's potential there to do future stuff. I mean, I kind of envisioned the characters that I was developing that could be kind of like an ongoing story.
Very nice. Well, I don't want to spoil it for anyone who hasn't read it. But yeah, he is a doctor, and what I like is that the people that he treats. I mean, you got some cameos in those comics, and I'm ready to say, how does he get away with this? You know what I mean? It's like, but the way you introduce these cameos, it's so spot on. And you know what? And that's the thing when you read a comic, you want to be entertained and surprised, and your comic definitely has that. So yeah, kudos, man.
Yeah, I appreciate that, because you never know, right? You have an idea in your head, and you put it out there, and you're hopeful that people will be receptive of it and enjoy it. So it's so far so good.
Yeah.
It's only 2 books in, but I'm definitely, I can't thank the community enough for supporting it,
Yeah.
for supporting the Kickstarter. So it's been, it's, I know a lot to the community for, for their support.
Yeah. So okay. So today's May 4th. May the 4th be with you. Are you doing anything Star Wars related today?
No, my wife, we've got some of the Star Wars movies on the TV as we're doing some stuff
Nice.
around the house.
Oh, you know they're going to be playing on TV.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think we're watching. I think she had on was Revenge of the Sith. I think was on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
I
think
think
so.
they have that in theaters. I think they're playing that in the theaters. That would be kind of cool to see in the theater again.
Yeah, yeah. I think
Um,
definitely.
let's see what else we got here. Bear with me. Do you have any other hobbies besides collecting comic books?
No, not really. I try to stay
Okay.
focused and not try to do too much. Um,
Yeah.
it's kind of like I've had different hobbies over the years, but I always seem to have like a single focus. Like I used to scuba dive for
Oh wow.
that was a big chunk of my life for like 6 or 7 years, and then now I haven't done that in a long time. And so, um, like I said, I in the beginning I was in just prior to getting back into collecting, I was really into the personal finance space because I wanted to learn about managing my money better and things like that. And so
Very
I kind
nice.
of move head first into that. So yeah, it's kind of like I go in like chunks of my hobbies in my free time.
Yeah. Well, my wife said if I get another hobby, she'll kill me. Since I have too many. So yeah. And
Yeah.
and the thing is that Brian, you're married, I'm married. Isn't it great to have someone that supports your collecting habits?
Yeah. Well, I remind her, I could be out, getting in trouble or,
Yeah.
drinking or doing
Yeah.
something else. So be
Yeah.
thankful I'm just collecting comics.
Yeah. And most definitely, and I noticed in your do you take her to the conventions, right?
Yeah, she comes sometimes,
Yeah.
like Heroes. She was thinking of coming to Heroes last year, but then she was like, you're going to be hanging out with all your friends and digging through comics. So she's like, you go, you go and have a good time. So,
Oh, God bless her. That's awesome. I'm taking my wife though.
okay. That's
Because the thing is that usually when I go to these conventions, like for example, I'm going to be flying to Charlotte from San Diego. It's a
right.
vacation, so I'm making this a vacation.
Yeah, that's a big
So
deal. Yeah, you're driving. Yeah, I mean, you're flying, coast to coast. So,
oh
but yeah,
yeah, oh, yeah.
my wife is from California. My wife is from Huntington Beach.
Oh wow, I've been there.
Yeah,
It's beautiful, beautiful out there.
yeah, yeah.
So does she still have family out there?
No, well, no, yeah, she extended family.
Okay,
That's how we
okay,
ended up in South Carolina. Her parents moved from, they were in the central coast of California, and they moved to the East Coast. So
yeah,
we were in New York, and then we moved south. So we all kind of converged on South Carolina.
nice, very cool. Okay, so I have a question. As far as if you could be any comic book character, what would it be?
Well, it's got to be Spider Man, right?
Yeah.
For me,
So
anyway.
nice. Okay. So bear with me here. I have some questions on my phone that I really wanted to ask you.
Okay.
Okay, so that's the character you want to be, but what character are you most relatable to?
Hmm.
And I'll tell you mine. But I want you to.
Probably the Hulk, right? I can certainly get angry.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. We all have our moments, but I can't see you being angry though, man. You're such a nice dude. But mine is Bilbo Baggins. The thing with me is that Bilbo Baggins is like an unlikely hero. You know what I mean? He's not. He doesn't want to be a hero. You know. The thing is like with me, I'm lazy. When it by nature, I just want to kick back and relax. But I know I got stuff to do.
Right.
When I start doing the stuff, that's when I start getting into the groove. But yeah, I'm Bilbo Baggins, man. I don't want to do nothing. Like, Only reason I got up this morning is because I'm interviewing you, man. And so,
Well,
and again,
I know.
I want to
At the
thank you
same
for
time,
being
I
on
was
the
like,
show.
Paul's getting up early on a Sunday.
I know. Drinking my mushroom coffee. All right. So, dude, we're doing great on time. So, okay. As far as how has social media helped you on everyday life?
I don't know if it's helped me everyday life. I think, well, I mean, I guess, right. Facebook, that was kind of the first really social media that I got
Yeah.
involved in. That was good for, when we initially got into Facebook was connecting with old friends, old high school friends, maybe friends you hadn't seen in a while. I don't know if it helps me a lot today in my everyday life, other than it sucks a lot of time because I'm always looking at my phone. But I think, from being a comic book creator, having social media to be able to promote the book and get it out in front of other eyeballs, I think is a good thing. Um, I won't join Discord because I just don't need another time suck in my life. So everybody keeps saying, "Oh, you
Yeah.
got to get on Discord. We're on Discord." I'm like, no,
Yeah.
not. I'm
Yeah.
not doing it.
Well, the thing with Discord, it moves so fast. You know what I mean? Like when they have like the thing and it just goes, you can't read anything. It's just a blur of like people giving them their opinion, and it's like, yeah, I don't need that either.
Yeah,
Um, the thing is that this is pretty much the tail end of our interview, and I ask my guests that come in that I want to ask them like some items that they covet, some comics that they covet in their collection. The thing is that um, a lot of the times when people show comics that they covet, it's not their most expensive comic. It's something that is more on a personal level. So,
right.
Brian, I wanted to ask you, what are some comics that you covet in your collection?
I grabbed a couple. So this is,
Oh yeah,
I mean, this is a little bit of a pricey book because it's a sub
yeah.
100
Classic
Spider-Man, but
cover,
it's
beautiful.
just one of my favorite covers, and it's
Yeah,
it's simply that. It's just a cover, a Green Goblin who's one of, I think Spider-Man's greatest villains, and
yeah.
just a Ramita Senior cover. So yeah, this is just one of my favorite books because of the artwork on the cover.
Yeah.
So that was
Nice.
the first one I pulled. Now this one is, like you said, it's not one of the most. This is not an expensive book at all, but this is Amazing Spider-Man 80. But this is my birthday book, so this was
Nice.
published the month and year that I was born. So it's just something cool to have. This book came into the world when I did. So it's just something that I enjoy. The birthday aspect, saying this I'm holding this book is it's as old as me. So it's
well,
just one of those books.
well, Brian, definitely appreciate you showing those books. Before we get out of here, is there anything you wanna say?
No, I mean, thank you so much for having me. Being the
Oh,
first
Brian.
guest, I'm honored, and like you said, CBC Awards that kicks off in June, and it's really it's dependent on the community. So definitely, check out cbcawards.org, the website where you'll do the nominations and voting, and we'll have more. We'll be promoting it and on Instagram, and we'll have some videos about it. In coming up soon. So, and then yeah, looking forward to seeing you in Charlotte.
Yeah, well, for
June.
sure. Dude, this went really well. I hope all my interviews are just as good as this. This was awesome. Again, I want to thank Brian LCS for being my first guest on
Yeah.
my one-on-one conversations with the community. As always, peace, happy collecting, and everyone take care.
See you.
Play the out music.